Hey everybody, in this video we're going to be talking about how to graph lines by using the X and Y intercepts. So today's lesson is going to be about graphing lines with the help of using X and Y intercepts. Now, I don't have a ruler on this thing, so bear with me because my lines are not going to be perfectly straight, but you'll get the idea. So we've already talked about at this point graphing lines in several different ways. We talked about y is equal to mx plus b, where m is equal to the slope and b is equal to the y-intercept. We also talked about lines in standard form, something like this. A is equal to mx plus by, something like that, in which you don't have the y by itself. In that case, you would have to get the y by itself before graphing the line. However, there is another way for us to be able to do this. And you don't always have to get the y by itself. So this is with the help of using the x and y intercepts. Now, let's recap really quick about how would we graph a line if we have a line, for example, like this. So let's say, for example, we have a line x equals -5. Well, that line, for us to be able to graph it, what it says is it crosses the x-axis at the value of -5. So basically, my line would be crossing at -5 and it would never change. But it's going to be crossing the x-axis, so therefore it's going to be going up and down, that way it can cross that x-axis. So similarly, if I change that number, let's say I change that line, instead of x equals -5, I change it to x is equal to, let's just go with 2. It's going to be crossing the x-axis at the value of 2, which means that it's going to be going up and down and crossing this line here vertically right at that +2. You can change that value to whatever number you want. For example, x is equal to 4. We'll cross the x-axis at the value of +4, etc., etc. What would happen though if I change that value to 0? X is equal to 0. So that would actually be crossing the x-axis at the value of 0, which would be right in the middle. That actually has another name for that line though. If you remember, the name for the line would be the y-axis. So another way of saying the y-axis is x equals 0. So basically, let's write this down on the side. Y-axis, the equation for the y-axis will be also known as x equals 0. Okay, so just remember that. So it's going to come into play in a little bit. So same way, let's say we wanted to graph a different line. Let's say we wanted to graph a line with the equation y is equal to 3. So that means it crosses the y-axis this time, which would be this line right here is going to cross that y-axis at the value of 3, which means that it's going to go instead of vertically, it's going to be going horizontally from left to right. So this will be my horizontal line, y equals 3. If I change that number from a 3, let's say we change that to a -2, now it's going to be crossing the y-axis at the value of -2, which means that it's going to be going left and right horizontally through the -2. What would happen if I change that value to a 0 now? So when I change it to y equals 0, that's y equals 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 would be right in the middle, right? That means that it's going to be going perfectly horizontally through the center and also through the origin, right, by default. So therefore, another way of saying this line, another way of saying y equals 0 is just saying the x-axis, right, is also known as wherever y is equal to 0. So the way that I remember it is basically the opposite, right? So if you want to figure out where the x-axis is going to be, that's also at the value of y equals 0. If you want to figure out where the y-axis is going to be, that's going to be the value of x equals 0. So think of opposite. So the y-axis is where x equals 0, and the x-axis is where y equals 0, opposite. So basically our findings are the following, right? So the findings are here. If you want to find the x-axis, you set x equal to 0. If you want to find the y-axis, did I say it backwards? If you want to find the x-axis, that'll be where y is equal to 0. If you want to find the y-axis, it'll be where x is equal to 0. Similarly, this applies for the x and y intercepts. So the intercepts are where it crosses the x or the y-axis. So the point in which the graph crosses the y-axis, this is an example of an illustration. Let's say you want to find the x-intercept of a random line. Let's say you want to have Let's go with something that we already know how to graph. Y is equal to 2x plus 1. Let's say we want to graph that. Our b, or our y-intercept, will be the number where we start from, right? In this case, it'll be the positive 1, so I'm going to put a point at the positive 1. Our slope is going to be whatever's in front of the x, which in this case is 2, which I'm going to write as 2 over 1. So starting at that 1, I'm going to go up 2 spaces over to the right 1, and that'll be my next point. I could also go up 2 spaces over to the right 1. That'll be my next point. I can do as many points as I want. I could go down 2 to the left 1, down 2 to the left 1, down 2 to the left 1. I can make as many points as I want. But at the end of the day, what's important here is that what is the y-axis and what is the x-axis? What is across the y and what is across the x? So in this case, the y-axis would be this point right here, which happens to cross at 1. So the y-intercept would be equal to positive 1 because that's where it crosses the y-axis. Similarly, we can look at the x-intercept. The x-intercept crosses in the middle, but I'm not entirely sure of where that is. And I want to be 100% sure before I can actually write anything down. But here's the deal with that. So as we saw earlier, if you want to find the x-axis, you said y equal to 0. If you want to find the y-axis, you said x equal to 0. So if you want to find the x-intercept, all you have to do is set the y equal to 0, meaning like the opposite number. And then you would just solve it. So let's say I wanted to find it in this equation here. If they didn't give me a graph, let's say I write it on the left side here. So I would basically just set y equal to 0, and I would be left with 2x plus 1, and then all I have to do is solve for x. And when I do that, it'll give me the value, it'll give me the point in which it crosses the x-axis or the x-intercept. In this case, when we solve this, we get negative 1 is equal to 2x, divide by 2, and then I can see that the x-intercept is at negative 1 over 2, which means that it crosses exactly in the middle here. So the x-intercept will be at negative 0.5 or negative 1 over 2, however you want to write that. Okay, so what we found is that if you want to find the x-axis, you set y equal to 0. If you want to find the y-axis, you set x equal to 0. It's always going to be the opposite. How does it help us with actual equations and actual graphs? That's exactly what we're doing here. So let's say you wanted to graph this linear equation, right? So one thing you can do is you can get the y by itself, right? So normally you would get the y by itself, and then you would graph it. If you want to do it that way, be my guest. But you could also do the following. So let's find, on the left-hand side, let's find the y-intercept. If you want to find the y-intercept, all we have to do is set the x equal to 0. It's going to be the opposite number, right? So basically what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be rewriting the same exact equation with the exception that instead of the x, I'm going to be writing the value of 0. So plug in 0 for x, everything else stayed the same, and then we're going to solve for y. And whatever number that we get for that value, that would be the y-intercept. So in this case, 2 times 0 will give me 0. 0 plus 3y is equal to 12. 0 goes away, right? Because it doesn't have a value. So then all we have to do is divide by 3 on both sides. So y is equal to 4. So what that tells me is that the y-intercept is at positive 4. So that means all I have to do is go up 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. Boom, there's my first point. And in order for me to graph a line, all I need is one additional point. So let's do that on the other side. So now on this side, we're going to find the x-intercept. So we're going to figure out where it crosses the x-axis. This is going to be the opposite, right? So we're going to be setting the y equals to 0 and then solving. So everything else stays the same. So 2x plus 3y equals 12. But in this case, instead of y, I'm going to be plugging in the value of 0. So once we set the y equal to 0, 3 times 0 gives me 0, right? So that'll be just 2x plus 0 is equal to 12. 0 goes away. 2x equals 12. We're going to divide by 2 on both sides. Divide by 2, divide by 2. So we get x is equal to 6. So what that tells me is that the x-intercept, it crosses the x-axis at 6, which is right over here, right? So if I want to find the equation of this line, all I have to do is connect the dots. Or if I wanted to graph this line, just connect the dots. And you have your graph. So that is the Linear equation, this is another way of graphing a linear equation by using y-intercepts. So again, opposite, you want to find the y-intercept, you set x equal to 0. You want to find the x-intercept, you set y equal to 0. And that's always going to be the case for any equation you have. Okay, so now example number 2. Let's see if you guys got the idea. So let's try to graph this using x and y intercepts. So on the left-hand side, let's actually, what are we finding? So let's find the y-intercept. And for that, we need to set the x equal to 0. So we're going to rewrite this whole entire equation. Negative 4x plus 5y equals 30. But instead of the x, we're going to be replacing that x with the value of 0. So all that means is that this goes away. 4 times 0 is 0. So that just gives me 5y equals 30. We have to solve this, so we just divide by 5 on both sides. This will give me the value of y is equal to 6. That means that the y-axis, or it crosses the y-axis at the value of 6. So I have to go to the y-axis and go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares, which will be right about here, right outside the page. And now all we have to do is find the next one, so we're able to graph. So on the other side, I'm going to find the x-axis. The x-axis, I know what I'm saying right now. The x-intercept by setting the y equal to 0. So everything else will stay the same. So negative 4x, let's try this again, plus 5y equals 30. But instead of the y, once again, I'm going to be setting the y value to 0. So plug that in. So 5 times 0 would give you 0. This will give you negative 4x plus 0 is equal to 30. The 0 goes away, obviously, so we just get negative 4x is equal to 30. And then we divide both sides by that negative 4. Divide by negative 4, divide by negative 4. This gives you x is equal to 30 divided by negative 4. We can simplify this a little bit. This will be negative 15 over 2 when we divide top and bottom by 2. And if you actually want to get a numerical value, 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. So we're going to say negative 7.5. So this is the x-intercept. We already had the y-intercept. So where x is equal to negative 7.5, this is negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And a half would be like somewhere over there. Sorry, my graph is off the grid, but this is the idea. So the x-intercept will be here on the left-hand side at this value, which I'm going to label as negative 5, negative 6, negative 7. This will be about negative 7.5, give or take, right? And then the value for the y would be up there at the value of, this is 5, this would be about 6. So there you have it. So you have the x-intercept that you found the y-intercept, and then you basically connected those 2 points with a ruler or something. So you're able to find the graph of that line, okay? Example number 3, same idea. So there's this one and then one more, and then we'll call it a day for the lesson. So let's do the same thing. So let's find the x-intercept on this side, and let's find the y-intercept on that side. So to find the x-intercept, you have to set the y equal to 0, opposite, right? To find the y-intercept, you have to set x equal to 0, opposite. So let's do that. On this side, we're going to be having x minus 2 times y is equal to 8. In this case, we're going to be replacing the y with a 0, which means that everything goes away except for the x. So the answer is x equals 8. So we found one of the answers. Let's do the next one. This time we're going to be setting y equal to 0. Oh, no, I screwed up, huh? Oh, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. Just kidding. Okay, so set x equal to 0. So this is going to be this value of 0. So 0 minus 2y is equal to 8. The 0 goes away, so we're going to be left with negative 2y is equal to 8. Divide by negative 2 on both sides. Divide by negative 2. We get y is equal to the value of negative 4. So there we have it. We have our x is equal to 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's make a couple more lines because I'm running out of grid space. So 6, 7, 8. So there's my x-intercept. Now to find my y-intercept, the y-intercept is going to be a -4. So this is the y-axis. It's going to hit at -1, 2, 3, 4. So there you go. You have your 2 points. All you have to do to make the line is connect these 2 points. So using a ruler or straight edge, and there's the equation of that line. Without having to get the y by itself, you're able to graph it. Okay. So the last example, same idea. We're going to be doing the exact same process. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to switch it up on you. Oop. So we're going to find the y-intercept, and here we're going to find the x-intercept. Did I write it backwards? Yes, I did. Was it on purpose? Maybe. So for this one, we're going to set x equal to 0 because it's the y. For the x-intercept, we're going to set y equals 0 because that is the x-intercept. So let's do that. So we're going to first set x equal to 0 here. So it's going to be 7 times x plus y is equal to -7. If we set x equal to 0, that means that this value would be 0 here. So then everything else would just drop down. 0 plus y is equal to -7, which means that we get the value of y equals -7 as our y-intercept. On the right-hand side, we're going to be doing something very similar, but this time we're going to be setting the y to 0. Everything else will be staying the same. So we start with the 7x plus y equals -7, but instead of the y, we're going to be plugging in 0 here. The 0 goes away, so it's just 7x is equal to -7. Divide by 7 on both sides. Divide by 7, we get x is equal to -1. So then there you have it. My x-intercept is at -1, which means it is going to cross right here on the x-axis. My y-intercept is going to be at -7, which means it is going to cross at -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need more space down here. 6, 7, so it'll be right about there. So then when I graph this line, if I connect these 2 points, it's going to be crossing these 2 points here. So it's going to have a very steep negative slope. Okay. So there you go. I hope this lesson was useful. This was how to graph linear equations in standard form by using the x and the y intercepts. See you guys on the next one.